This episode of the Model 3 Owners Club podcast is brought to you by Doulaban Insurance. If you live in Ontario, Canada, and are looking for the best price and coverage on your Tesla, give Doulaban a call at 1-855-385-4226 or visit our website at doulabaninsurance.com/Tesla. A little bit of late-breaking news this morning, of course, right after we recorded the podcast. I wanted to throw it in here. Tesla just made an announcement this morning of three things. Number one, they feel that Autopilot is so important and is so safe that they are now including it on all cars going forward. So, for example, a little bit of a price increase. The Standard Range Plus used to cost $37,500. It now costs $39,500. So it's a $2,000 increase, whereas Autopilot used to cost $3,000. No mention whether the standard range car will be affected, but I'm going to say yes. The second part of the announcement is leasing is now available for customers in the US on the Model 3. So now you have an option of an annual mileage of 10,000, 12,000, or 15,000 miles. And the last bit of information is Tesla is streamlining their production. So what they're going to be doing for the standard range Model 3 is that they're going to take the Standard Plus battery and they're going to do a software limit on it. Range will be affected by about 10%. So all good news that they're following through on that. They also say that for customers that really want a long-range rear-wheel drive Model 3, you'll have to visit a store to talk to one of their sales specialists to place a custom order for that. Anyways, we'll have more information as we follow through with this stuff as the days go by. So let's get back into the show. Oh, we're having a good time. Good evening, everyone. I hope you're doing well. We're just starting the podcast. First of all, I want to say thank you for everybody for listening and joining in wherever you happen to be. I am joined this evening by my good pals, Ian Pavelko and Eric Camacho. Gentlemen, how are you doing this night?
Hello. Hello.
I think it goes without saying, congratulations to everyone at SpaceX. Flawless launch today of Falcon Heavy. I know we were talking about possibly watching it during the podcast, but lo and behold, they actually launched on time today. Actually, a little sooner we kind of expected today, because they've had some delays. But as always, fabulous to watch. And of course, they nailed the landing, both side cores and the middle core on, of course, I Still Love You. That was epic.
Work of art, man. Just a work of art.
I was saying before the show that the past 2 days have been nothing but amazing when it comes to science, between the discovery of the first photograph of a black hole in M87 and now the SpaceX launch today. So a banner week in the world of science.
You know, SpaceX makes it look easy, but as we know, science in space is very difficult because the Israeli space administration, of course, they lost their lander today, which was very sad because they were trying to land on this thing. Of course, SpaceX launched the device, and they've been over the last month trying to get it in orbit and stuff. They successfully got in orbit, and then during the deorbit to the landing today, they lost the spacecraft. So sad news, but at least we didn't lose any lives, so that's always good. Maybe they can try again, raise some more funds, build another one, and off they go. What we were saying, I mean, you had a little bit of trivia. What were the only 3 countries in the world to actually land something successfully on the moon?
U.S., China, and Russia.
That's right. We were hoping for a 4th one, but there's always next time.
It's still amazing, though, that since the 70s, only 12 American men have ever set foot on the moon. And I want to say in the last week, NASA had a press conference where they were talking about the first woman and the next man to go land on the moon. So, it's long overdue to have a woman land on the moon. It'd be great if it's an American. If it's not, that's fine. But now we're seeing both private and public entities trying to essentially race to get back to the moon. So I think SpaceX is on target to do it first. Before NASA does, but certainly that partnership is not to be disregarded.
Well, at least their launch vehicle's in the play, because SLS, as we know, is horribly over budget and behind. So now they're looking at alternatives, and one of them obviously is a Falcon Heavy with a modified second stage, so they can actually send that the Orion capsule, of course, and the I think it's the European service module. They built the service module for that thing. So, anyways, exciting times. Ian, you look like you had something to say.
Yeah, I was just going to add one of the things. I know that one of the managers or directors at NASA thought he was going to get into trouble because there was a talk about, or he discussed publicly the idea of having a composite spacecraft that would be part SLS and part Falcon. I forget exactly what the configuration was, but it was some sort of an interesting arrangement where they could mate the stages to get up there quicker. And, you know, he was like, oh, well, NASA's going to hate it if I say this. But you know what? So be it. If that's the solution that gets everybody up and running the quickest, you know, go for it.
That's why they've thrown so much money at the commercial sector to get this stuff done. They're not interested in low Earth stuff. They want to be able to go out to the stars and stuff. And you know, I'm sorry. I mean, at the end of the day, the SL. I mean, this is turning into a space podcast, but that's not the point here. But you know, the whole SLS thing at the end of the day,
we're good.
The whole SLS thing has just turned into an employment scheme. You know, it hasn't really borne any fruit, and it's sad to see because, you know, I kind of miss those days. But anyways, it is what it is. And we, you know, we'll continue to watch whatever happens in the space sector because it is of interest to us. Having said that, we have to get into the show because there is so much news to talk about. A lot of it is really tweets on, you know, on Elon's part because a lot of information comes out of that, and more continuation about Autopilot. Autopilot is still the hot topic, of course, because, you know, the latest software update came out with the no confirmation on lane changes on enhanced auto or navigate on Autopilot. I'm still trying to get the terms straight in my head. Yeah. Anyway, so the first one that comes up is a tweet by Elon, and I'm going to bring it up here on the screen. You guys can't see it here, but we'll put it in post for most of you. There was a question here. Vincent actually had posted something about the Gigafactory 3 in Shanghai, and Elon replied to his tweet, and he said, building the primary structure completion seems to be on track for May. Then it will take several months to install and activate the factory equipment. He was just correcting Vincent. Bonnie Norman jumped in and she said, are you doing an exact copy of the existing lines, meaning can we reuse validation plans, existing processes, and training, etc.? Right. And Elon responded, says, no, it's better. So I'm hoping that they don't reinvent the wheel too much, but if they have better processes, because let's face it, they don't design a factory like this in 6 months. This has been going for years, of course. So I'm looking forward to seeing that because the progress on the Shanghai Gigafactory is just incredible. I mean, they don't fool around in China.
It's the same thing, but it goes to 11.
Yes, exactly. And again, we still haven't seen any expansion in the Gigafactory 1. Of course, the news kind of going around right now, and it's unconfirmed, of course, that it looks like there's a possibility of Panasonic and Tesla kind of cutting back a little bit on their expansion plans. Now, you know, that could be on the battery side of things. That doesn't necessarily mean that they can't expand the Gigafactory because, of course, as we know, the default plan is to expand the Gigafactory 1 in Sparks, Nevada so they can actually start production of the Model Y, the Tesla Roadster, and Semi. We're just assuming at this point, it just makes sense. So we're looking forward to that. Right. Next one is Elon took to Twitter and talked a little bit more about the FSD computer because there was some talk going around as to, you know, how much processing power does this thing have? Let me just bring up the right tweet here so you guys can see it. Here we go. Yeah, so there was talk about the FSD computer. Someone named Anner had jumped on and says, will it require going to a service center or it can be done by mobile? We're talking about the FSD computer upgrade, Phil. So for those of you who bought FSD, and I've been saying it many times, having seen it myself personally in my dash, that, you know, a mobile service technician can do that. Elon confirmed it. Mobile can do it, no problem. And then someone else jumped in just afterwards and says, what's the compute load on the AP2.5 cars, which basically encompasses all cars made today as of about 3 weeks ago, because hardware 3 cars or FSD computers now are actually being manufactured and they're actually in cars. Elon took to Twitter and responded 80% is what the current load is. And he went on to confirm a little bit later that the new FSD computer can do exactly what AP2.5 computers can do now at 5% load. 5%. So this computer has legs. And even if it can do what it can do now at 5, imagine what it'll be able to do at FSD. I'm hoping that they still have some headroom in this thing, but super impressive. We know for a fact that the FSD computer is actually in cars because our good friend Eric and Dave from the Tesla Inventory YouTube channel took delivery of their Model X, and they took it apart and discovered it definitely has the part number for the hardware 3 computer. It's funny, the nomenclature that they're using for the FSD computer is very interesting. We all call it hardware 3. Tesla internally on their website ordering calls it hardware 4, and Tesla is insisting we call it FSD Computer. So the numbers are kind of interchangeable. So, you know, hardware 3, hardware 4, if you go to order something, and FSD are all the same thing. Interesting.
I wonder if there was a third generation computer that got stillborn, because what's with the 4?
Well, it's because internally they had a the 2.5 computer. I think the numbers where they called it 2.5, but I think
maybe it was 3.
There was some confusion and some misnumbering going on, whatever. But anyways, we got to get in the habit of calling the FSD computer because that's what Tesla wants to call it from now on. So that's what it is. But if you're out there and you hear 2.5, they're very close. I mean, yes, there are some differences between 2 and 2.5, but FSD is the hardware level 3 computer. So if you hear that, that's the same thing. I know it's confusing. It's crazy. Right. So another tweet we're going to get to here is something that we've talked about before, or people have sent in questions. I've seen it on my YouTube channel, and it has to do with Autopilot detecting potholes. And can the cars be able to detect potholes eventually and avoid them? So, yes, we definitely have a tweet because someone jumped onto Twitter, and I have one feature request: swerve the car whenever possible within a lane to avoid small potholes to increase tire life. Elon responded with definitely. You know, you have to remember, Autopilot is largely a vision-based system, so if they can train the visuals on the computers to recognize different things, they can take action. Of course, doesn't happen overnight. They need to train the systems as they go, but this is encouraging because, Ian, you know what potholes are all about.
Yes, they're a large part of what furnishes my paycheck now. It's sad to say that, a lot of wheels get destroyed here. You know, like, we pride ourselves on having super pothole resistant wheels, but at the end of the day, nothing's indestructible. And, you know, the OE wheels suffer the same fate ultimately. So, I think that's fantastic. I mean, because especially when it'll be interesting to see if it can beat the human reaction time. Theoretically, it could, right? Because when you've got enough distance in front of you to see it, but it's when you're following a car in front of you, and like there's 3 milliseconds of, there's that no bang, and you're in it, you know. And I think at some point it wouldn't surprise me if the FSD computer has got the wherewithal to spot it and avoid it before a human would even move their hands.
Well, how many reports are we going to get of people like freaking out with cars jerked out of the way if they don't make it smooth or something? So,
well, maybe because you won't even see the hole, right? The computer's going to boop, boop, and it's like, what was that, you know?
Well, the moment my car does anything weird on Autopilot and Miss Daisy's in the other seat there, she flips out. She goes, "What the heck happened?" Like, it's just Autopilot doing its thing, dear. You know,
exactly.
It's a teenager. Anyways, more information is always good, so we're looking forward to that. Speaking of which, more Autopilot stuff. Enhanced Summon is coming out this week. Now, Elon had tweeted this last week. Let me just bring up the tweet here. On April 6th, he says Tesla Enhanced Summon coming out in the U.S. It's very important to remember that it's in the U.S. only next week for anyone with Enhanced Autopilot or Full Self-Driving. So if you bought either one of those, you're going to get Enhanced Summon. That should be releasing this week. We started getting some reports that it is starting to go out. So that is one feature. I mean, Summon, I actually used Summon once today. I actually went downtown. I parked in an underground parking, and the car was really tight, and I said, I think this is a job for Batman. So I pulled out my phone and pulled out the car, and it worked, and I figured, okay. But Enhanced Summon is something that I'm really looking forward to. And we actually have some more questions about Enhanced, well, it's something that ties into Enhanced Summon, but we'll talk about that later when we get into the viewer and listener questions. By the way, thank you for everybody for sending in the questions. If you're watching this on YouTube and you don't know where we get these questions, we ask them on Twitter, but you feel free to send us questions. You can just send them to, I forget where their email address. I'll give it out at the end of the show when I look it up. But I know, I'm not prepared for that part. But
it is not Trevor was wrong at TeslaOwnersClub.com.
Well, no, I think we got to start. We got to start a new one. It's Trevor forgot.
Yeah, Trevor
was wrong. He just forgot.
Yeah.
Hashtag Trevor
Oops.
forgot.
That's right.
Just oops.
That's it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Confirmation. Our good friend Earl hopped out onto Twitter, and he published.
You don't say.
You don't say. Gotta like that. This article comes courtesy of Teslarati, and confirming that early access program will reportedly be extended to full self-driving buyers. Now, this is confirmation. This comes from our good friend Earl, who received an email from Tesla on that very same question because he bought FSD way back before any of us ever did during the fire sale time. So this really applies to those who bought FSD prior to, I think it was February 28th was the cutoff date.
Yeah.
Before they had the fire sale. So, again, it's Tesla kind of confirming what they had said before, that was going to be one of the privileges for people who bought it early, was to be able to get into the early access program. They basically go on to say that once we have the appropriate information, we'll be communicating to our customers. Invitations will go out automatically to all qualifying owners. The good news is that there are no extra steps needed on your part to receive the invitation. So it'll just happen automatically. Likely you get an email from Tesla saying you're in, and here's your NDA, and off you go. Although NDAs don't seem to mean anything these days when it comes to early access, because we've seen plenty of stuff talking about what's going on here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Right. The next one here is a little bit of follow-up.
Trev,
yeah, go ahead.
We sort of skipped around, I think, what was the biggest Autopilot news, which is the fact that we now have Navigate on Autopilot with no lane change required.
Correct.
Did we talk about that? Because I don't think we did, and that's like a
well, I did a video.
thing.
I put out a video yesterday because I finally got it. Now, some people will say, "Oh, this is old news. This came out last week, and there's plenty of videos." Yeah, but being Canada, we're always usually a week or so behind. Just typical
conversion rate.
Yeah, conversion rate. Yes, exactly. So I had a chance to test it out myself. I did a video. I'll link to it, and you guys can watch it on your own. But Ian, you've received it?
Yeah, I did. When was it? I got it on Saturday, and I immediately took it out for a drive up and down Highway 40. So I reported back my findings, and then, of course, that was a whole slew of questions on how it worked. So we had a good little thread going. And who pops up in the middle of the thread but Mr. Musk himself, which was kind of cool. It's like, what? Okay.
Phone starts getting warm.
But it answered a great question. A lot of people were saying, like, there were reports that, yes, it doesn't require any confirmation, but if it doesn't detect your hands on the wheel, you have to give the steering wheel a tug or something like that. So in other words, it really does require confirmation. And I was like, no, I did for me, but my thing is I constantly hold a pressure. There's different ways you can do it, right? You can give the car a little tweak every 20 seconds, or you can just keep a steady pressure. I don't know which method you guys use, but I just sort of lean my hand there. I find it's easier.
My hand's in the lower 7 o'clock position.
Yeah, exactly. So I found it doing that, just keeping a constant torque, it was fine. It didn't require any additional input. And conversely, a lot of people also reported in that they found since the 8.5 update or whatever update you got to give you no confirmation, they have to put more force. I don't find that. Do you guys find there's any difference in the force?
I haven't noticed a difference in that.
I find that just resting my hand on the steering wheel and just the micro movements of the vehicle jostling is just enough to put enough torque on it. It just works.
It's fine. Yeah.
There have been times when it's just like, okay, well, let's just do the autopilot thing that I used to do, which was just give the steering wheel a flick every second or two. And that seems to work it just as well. But you know what? Just having your hand in the corner just works just fine.
Well, the speed of... Sorry, go ahead, Derek.
No, I was going to say, the one complaint I really have about it, well, kind of two complaints, but the major one is, so I have Mad Max mode set for my NOA, and the thing is, even with that, I do feel like the car is overly cautious, trying to change lanes, where it almost seems like I have to have a block's distance between my car in front of me and the car behind me. So there are times where I, the driver, if I have full control of the car, I would turn into the next lane far sooner than what Autopilot's been doing. So I don't know if that's just more of the metrics of building in extra, redundancy and safety, which is probably what's happening. But there are a lot of drivers here in Florida, for example. If I turn on my turn signal, that's their indication. I have to go faster to keep you from getting in my lane now. And so I'm kind of like stuck and the car's just waiting to kind of get its clearance. The other thing I've noticed too is that there are times where it wants me to go into the lanes to the right for my exit, for example. But the traffic is so remarkably slower that I don't want it to get that lane. So it seems like every time it says, tap on the screen or use your stalk to cancel the lane change, it might be like 10 or 15 seconds before it asks me again, and it asks me again, and it asks me again. That's annoying in many ways because you just have to constantly be on top of it. I'd rather the car decide to bypass slower traffic and then get into the lane to get to the exit, rather than go from, let's say, 75 miles per hour down to 55 when I still have 2 miles to go until my exit.
Yeah.
I would get there faster going 75. So that's kind of my little nitpicks with it for right now. But it's been comfortable to drive with it.
I had 2 things happen to me. Matter of fact, today. One of them was the car decided I'm going to get into this lane, and then it's just like, nah, maybe not. it just says no.
I'm out.
And the other one was this morning. I was driving down the 404 to go to downtown Toronto. I had a job to do this morning, and I have my avoidances, or not the avoidances, but the time saving set to about 5 minutes. So of course, when you come down, I mean, if you know Toronto, you come down to the 404, and you get to the 401 east-west, and that is just, it's gridlock all the time. And my car, of course, is in the HOV lane, so I wanted to move over. And then when I got to the navigation part, it wanted to take this huge detour, go on the highway and take these residential roads to get around this roadblock that is basically south of the 400. Or the 401. Anyways, so to make a long story short, it kept trying to change lanes to get into the lane I just want to go straight. I don't care. I mean, if it saves me 5 minutes, whatever. So I'm playing with the settings, trying to say, you know what, forget it. Just put it at 10, 15. It never changed. So at some point, at the point of no return, it just kind of gave up. But it kept putting the blinker on. I'm like, stop. So eventually I just canceled the whole thing and just kept driving. And then it went, oh, okay, I get what you're doing. So I wish there were maybe some other settings in there, maybe not to do that, or like, on some GPSs, you can press a button and it says take a detour and we'll just pick another route.
Yes,
right.
That I would like on the navigation system. Like, stop doing this, pick another route. Just like, whatever. That's just me. Otherwise, it's been okay, but yes, I understand your concern of it being a little bit trepidatious. I've noticed it in the last couple of days. It seems to be more trepidatious or more cautious than it has been in the past. But maybe it's just part of their validation process. They're just being a little bit more conservative until they get some more miles under their belt, and then they can just maybe crank it up a little bit. But I actually am pretty impressed with what it can do so far.
Yeah.
No, for sure. And some things it's actually better at now than it's ever been. Like, I mean, I'd complained last week about 8.4. Well, both 3.3 and 0.4 being really jerky with the speed adjustments following traffic, like just basic TAC functions. And that is so smooth now. And it does a much better job, I find, even at lower speeds, of staying a very close distance to the car ahead of you. Before, a car would accelerate and it would take it forever to catch up, and 6 more cars would get into your lane. And now it's like, whoop, it's right in there.
I don't find that. I usually have to nudge my car.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, it's time to go now. So I'll just step on it a little bit.
Maybe from a dead stop, but I'm talking, from like 20, 30, 40 miles an hour.
Oh, that's different. But for me, from a dead stop, it's like, okay, let's go. And this guy's going to get in my spot. You know how people are. Anyways, enough of talking about that.
All
right. It's always good topics. There's so much to talk about. I want to take just a couple minutes here. It's a little bit of follow-up from our discussion last week. We had a viewer question come in from someone named Wilson, and he was asking specifically about the Model Y internal camera, like the Model 3 has the internal camera. And so we have some confirmation because a Twitter account called Living Tesla, I'll bring it up here, you guys can see the tweet here, until Tesla or Elon Musk tells us what the camera is doing. For me, I'm shutting it off. So he basically put a little video, puts a little sticker on it. Elon immediately got on and said, it's there for when we start competing with Uber and Lyft and people allow their car to earn money for them as part of the Tesla shared autonomy fleet. In case someone messes up your car, you can check the video. So there's your confirmation, Wilson. That is exactly what the camera is for and what their intents are. So, yeah, Model Y will certainly have that, as well as any future cars coming and whatever updates that Tesla does. So that's a little bit of follow-up on that one. First time we've actually had some interesting info, like literally the very next day after we did that, that information came out. Okay, moving along, some more stuff. Some good news. Someone had been asking about the video situation. One of the common questions people ask about is when is the Tesla screens in the cars going to support some kind of video? Now, Elon last year said that they were going to add video playback capability to the cars sometime in version 10 of the software. Right now, we're essentially at version 9. Version 10 will largely be next year. So it popped up on Twitter again. Jeff Finkelstein asked, does it support video playback while in park? And Elon said, it will enable video when parked and connected to Wi-Fi. All Tesla Superchargers will have free Wi-Fi over time. So this is good news. This is a great move, adding Wi-Fi to the Supercharger. I hope they have high-speed Wi-Fi, but that's awesome. I think, there's lots of times, I can't be bothered to, play the video games. I don't play the video games in the car that much, but certainly I could be able to watch a video or something like that while you're supercharging, because let's face it, you're there for a few minutes. So all good news. Yeah, somebody posted a video underneath, hey, we can pull up Netflix. That'd be kind of fun.
Well, he did say a while back that was going to happen one day, wouldn't he? We'd be able to
well, that's what I'm saying, that they would add video support to the cars in version 10. Now, I think a lot of it has to do with the browser at this point, because it really has to be a browser-type function. And we know that the current browser in the cars does not support HTML5 video. Just no processing power in the browser, as we know, sucks. So it is what it is. Okay, another piece of information. This was interesting because, Sentry Mode has been making the rounds, of course, and unfortunately Sentry Mode on my car does not work. I kind of attributed it to my computer in the car not being fast enough to be able to write the videos. I had all kinds of problems with my screen and software reboots and stuff until I just yanked the USB key out, and I said, fine, I give up. Car's been great ever since. Different on Model 3 because you guys have a faster processor in your car than I do in my car. I have to talk to my buddy Mike. He has a newer Model X than I do, and he has the Intel-based MCU. So I'm going to have to ask him and see how his is behaving. But on mine, yeah, it's not even worth the. Not even worth it. So, anyways, getting back to Sentry Mode, this in video, and I'm going to show you the video here. I'm just going to bring it up here and play it. This came courtesy of ABC News 7, where a thief was caught breaking a window, and he got arrested. I think he got arrested.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, he was on ABC. Saw the car in front and the license plate and the whole thing.
Yes, yes, a little bit later on. Yes, that's right. Exactly. It's coming up here. So he gets in some kind of Honda, and the license plate was captured. So, yeah, Sentry Mode actually works. Yay! All right, let me just pause this video here. Good thing there's no music. We don't want copyright issues. So yeah, awesome. I mean, I don't. It's funny. The dash cam on my car is not something that I use because I actually have a quality dash cam, so it doesn't bother me. And you know what? I really got to hop on Twitter and ask Elon and see if it's possible to be able to have Sentry Mode independent of the dash cam. I think maybe in my case it's just overload. I don't know. If I could turn off the dash cam and just use Sentry Mode, I'd be perfectly happy. Maybe they can make that happen. I don't know. You guys, do you guys use the Sentry Mode, the dash cam function?
I don't.
No, neither.
I haven't even configured the file folder. I'm so lazy. Like I haven't used the dash cam function. I haven't. No. I just drive, man. Just drive. As long as the car drives. I'm had what's that old punk song? Just drive, she said. But yeah, no, I will eventually. I mean, I can see the value in it, and after seeing these incidents that have already been caught on the key, it's like, wow, there's a lot of value to this. So the odd time I park somewhere sketchy, I'm definitely going to want to have that hooked up.
Oh, a little bit of a PSA for those of you who have Sentry Mode who are looking to do software updates. Make sure you turn Sentry Mode off before you apply the update. I know that firsthand because I had 2019 8.4 on my car and everything was fine, and then I got an update on my phone saying there was a software update, and I tried applying it. Turns out it was 8.5, and it kept failing, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? Until I went into the car, and the car, big bright letters, didn't say it in the app, but it said on the car, you got to turn off Sentry Mode. I said, I turned Sentry Mode off in the app on the phone, and it said, I don't know what you're talking about. So yeah, if you have issues with software updates not taking on your car, especially if you do it from the app, make sure you turn off Sentry Mode because the app will not tell you that. Only the car will tell you that. So just Uncle Trevor giving you a little bit of a PSA there. Okay, moving along. We're still talking about firmware here. Well, there's been a lot of reports that 2019.12. Now, it's interesting because it looks like it's been pulled or halted. I do believe that this is an early access program software release. So since it's in the open, we'll talk about it a little bit. There is a thread going on the forum here, and someone had posted some screenshots, so I'll just bring them up here. So again, they're talking about Navigate on Autopilot, some improvements, of course, on the high-speed performance, but some other stuff in here that's coming. Here it is, right here, software updates. So now there is an opportunity now by tapping on the screen controls where you can actually request software downloads from Tesla rather than waiting for them to stage and just kind of waiting. That you can actually request them, and it will actually give you a progress meter as it's downloading. I'm assuming that this is just on, yeah, it says it's just on Wi-Fi. So again, Elon coming through on something that he promised that was going to happen. The next little bit is some more games for the Tesla Atari. I got to get that straight. So addition to some new games, 2048. We know that Lunar Lander and Asteroids are still in there. They did pull pole position. I know a lot of people were asking about pole position. Turns out that Tesla had problems with licensing or the rights or something like that, and that's why they pulled it. They said that they were going to add some kind of game later on in the future that will be similar, kind of a racing thing, because it turns out it's very popular. So they will add more of that. Let's
Super Breakout, I think, is planned to come out for Tesla. Super Breakout, and in the Tesla video, and I don't have it queued up here, but they put out a video, and one of them is Tempest, one of my favorite games of all time. So, yeah. So looking forward to those games being added. Let's see here. This update looks like it includes also the promised en route battery warm-up. This is the one, so if you have a destination typed into your car and you're on your way to a supercharger, that it will actually start warming up your battery before you get to the supercharger, so you get a good, solid charge rate. They're talking about some additional language supports in the car and the updated Chromium browser, of course. So hopefully it'll make the browser actually usable, and something that will get Ian's hair growing here is a tire pressure monitoring system, a reset function.
Yeah, man.
Tell us why reset's important, Ian.
Well, reset's nice to be able to go in there, if you're having problems with the sensors where you could manually re-trigger that it relearns them at the basic. But that's not exactly what made the hair start to grow. What really got me excited was the fact that you could reset. Just teasing, man. No. That would be a good thing, really, if it did that. It's like more updates. We can just fill in this little spot here. But no, the cool thing was you could set the threshold pressure, and I've lost Eric, that the alarm will come on at. And let me explain why that's important. Like the factory pressures on Model 3s, for instance, range between 42 and 45 psi. So let's suppose you have a car that's programmed to 42 psi as your standard pressure. Well, when the pressure starts to drop, if it gets cold, or if you just get, something in the tire and you start losing air, at some point you'll get a trigger, like you'll get a warning on the screen telling you maybe around 36, 37 psi, link. There'll be a little, you're losing pressure type of thing, and it's going to keep pestering you until you attend to it. If you want to run your car on the track, let's say, ideally with certain types of competition tires in a certain size, you might want to run a pressure somewhere in the 30s, which means you're going to be getting that warning all the time. And I've never experienced this myself with the car. But in certain instances, if you've got a TPMS warning and it's not attended to, it might actually start tightening up some of the car's functions. Like it might not let us access track mode anymore, or any of the sportier things that the car can do. It might start to get a little bit more conservative. But at the bare minimum, you don't want the TPMS warning light, going on when you're trying to set a hot lap. So I thought this was cool, and it's a nice gesture. There's a couple of American car companies that have done this, but everybody else has been very tight about it because it's a regulatory thing, right? What if you set the wrong pressure in there, and you lose a tire and something happens? So that's a very cool move on Tesla's part, and it says right in the release notes, to support aftermarket tires. Yes. Usually OEMs are like, aftermarket just never appears in their language, and I love that they're doing that. Like power to the people now.
Well, we know for sure that early part of the winter, of course, we had a lot of problems with aftermarket tires because everybody's switching over to winter tires, and we had all kinds of problems with the TPMS system going off, of course, because Tesla, as it turns out, was not validating other tires other than what they were selling.
Well, it actually wouldn't trigger the TPMS, but what it was doing is it was making the regen
it was the
crazy.
regen. It was the regen. I apologize. Yes, that's right.
But,
I got my nomenclature screwed up.
That's okay.
Trevor was wrong. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Trevor was wrong. Okay, one more little bit here at the bottom here is auto steer stoplight warning. That's the one where it detects stoplights. Again, that's probably a regulatory issue. I wouldn't necessarily see that in Canada. Well, who knows? But yeah, that's not necessarily stopping the car at a red light. It's just a warning. So again, it's part of the FSD function so that they can actually deploy FSD eventually, because FSD needs to be able to see streetlights in order to do its magic. So that's some of the information that's come out now. The talk that's going around on the forum right now looks like the release of that has been halted. They probably found some edge cases, some bugs, or whatever the case may be. It will come, whatever the version number happens to be when they release it. Well, we'll know eventually when it happens. I think the current release that's out now, the latest is what, 8.6, right? Something along those lines is about. I have to check Teslafy, but it's around there. I have 8.5. So, I mean, there's always different point releases between the cars. It's just one of those lockstep type things that seems to happen.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see here. Eric, I want you to take on this one here. Tesla has released their Q1 safety report, as they have promised they were going to do every quarter. So take it away, Eric, and let us know what's been going on.
Sure. So the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration puts out crash statistics on a yearly basis, not on a quarterly basis, but Tesla's been putting out some numbers, and we'll first reveal what their numbers were for Q1 of 2019. According to the report, in the first quarter, we registered one accident for every 2.87 million miles driven in which drivers had autopilot engaged. For those driving without autopilot, we registered one accident for every 1.76 million miles driven. By comparison, NHTSA's most recent data shows that in the United States, there was an automobile crash every 436,000 miles. So very contrast numbers between what Tesla produces and what the NHTSA shows. Now, where does that compare to Q4 of 2018? Well, in that report, Tesla referred of having one accident per 2.91 million miles with autopilot and one per 1.58 million miles driven without autopilot. So the numbers are a little bit different. You can see that the autopilot number dropped from Q4 last year to Q1 this year, and the number of accidents, the total number of miles driven increased for those without autopilot. So there's kind of a shift in those numbers there. But all in all, that includes any near miss. So if the car detected a potential collision and it alerted the driver and the driver took an evasive action, or the car did it itself, Tesla includes that number. The NHTSA number only includes actual accidents that transpired. So if you're looking for data that's really going to show how Tesla's doing with trying to get to level 4 and level 5 autonomy, so far these numbers are very strong indicators that they're heading the right track, and they've continued to show outstanding results on a quarterly basis compared to that of all other vehicles across all other markets. So that's what the report is for this quarter. Again, we're seeing the same trend time and time again. And one thing I do want to add here, this is a story in Teslarati, but MIT recently did a study with Tesla owners who have autopilot on their vehicles since 2015. And they've tracked over 1 billion with a B, miles driven, and found that most of the time, about 35% of the time in which the autopilot was engaged, there's about 19,000 disengagements were annotated, indicating that drivers are, in fact, very aware of what's happening as they're driving. So a lot of folks seem to think that if you're not aware of autopilot, like, oh, you're just going to sit in your car and you're going to do whatever you want. You're going to shave, eat your breakfast, play games on your phone, whatever it is. But we've seen that Tesla drivers are very responsible and in many cases are still hand on the wheel, taking evasive action, doing what they can to avoid accidents. And the numbers in this report show that.
I think part of the discrepancy, between the last quarter and this one is largely because of winter. Up where we are, people are driving a little less, you know, things. So that might be skewing the numbers. So it'll be interesting to see what reports happen over the next 2 quarters, just to kind of bear that out, because of course they've only started doing these reports, you know, a few quarters ago. So
yeah,
all's good news. I mean, you know, Autopilot's certainly doing its job. So looking forward to that. Eric, I want you to talk about this next one here, because this is kind of in your wheelhouse, because it's
America.
Oh, America.
Yes. America.
Yes. So as it turns out, there is a possibility that the federal tax credit could be extended by giving the manufacturers an additional 400,000 cars allowed to that. So go ahead and tell us about this.
Sure. So here in the U.S., there's been some conversation in the last week or so regarding what's called the Driving America Forward Act, or DAFA. Again, because we have to have
acronyms, baby.
I know. DACA, DAFA, STEAM, all that stuff. So the bill is called the Driving America Forward Act, and what it would do is it would grant each automaker, and of course this largely would focus on General Motors and Tesla initially, just because of the fact that they're either eclipsed in Tesla's case or was close to doing so with General Motors. It would give each automaker a $7,000 tax credit for an additional 400,000 vehicles on top of the existing 200,000 vehicles that were eligible for the $7,500 tax credit. And it would also then shorten the phase-out schedule to 9 months. So that's the thing. Now, the other thing that's part of this bill is it would also extend the hydrogen fuel cell credit through 2028. Now, the bill is estimated to cost about $11.4 billion, with all but about $91 million of that to extend the EV tax credit. Now, the thing, and I'm going to be very conscientious about this, our White House administration has said that they want to basically cut the program altogether. They realize that the amount of money that it's losing, the current program is losing, is in excess of $2.5 billion over a decade. I'm someone who feels like that is a worthwhile expenditure to try to curb climate change, to curb our emissions, and to get more electric vehicles on the road as fast as possible. When I look at our budget with the military, you know, I sort of have some questions on how much is being dedicated for that. And there's also now been conversations in Congress this week where our Secretary of Education wants to cut funding to education programs. So it is weird on the things that in America that we're trying to sort of cut funding from are the things that we vitally need more than anything else. That being said, there is bipartisan support with this bill. There are Republicans and Democrats, both in the House and Senate, who are supporting this bill. I have hope that they can do something, but it is entirely possible that if it does go to the White House desk and the president decides to veto it, you know, we'll see. So this is a long, drawn-out process. We're not sure when this is going to actually get passed. Again, they're just in the initial stages of trying to propose the bill. It still has to get put on the floor. It have to get voted on. But if it were to materialize, if it does get passed, this is a substantial boost for those who are looking to get an electric car, maybe now are trying to figure out when to get theirs. We know right now the current program in the U.S. is set to expire at the end of this year. It's already now April, so we don't have a lot of time left for those who want to capitalize on the 3750 now or 1875 later. But yeah, it's we're at the calendar is getting pretty narrow. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, if they can get this passed and they can get some extension on this, it'd be great for all manufacturers, especially those that are trying to get their EV programs online as fast as they can.
So I have a question, and
yeah,
you know, I'm just kind of spitballing here. What if this was passed maybe towards the end of the year or a little bit later? Let's say it gets passed maybe sometime next year or whatever. Could they? Do you think there's a possibility they could make it retroactive so that other people would be able to claim the tax after the fact, or do you think it would only be applicable at the time of it going into effect?
Well, they're certainly indicating that it would be adding 400,000 vehicles. So whether that's from when you hit the mark, but I mean, the question then comes into working with the IRS here in the U.S. How do you then retroactively work on your taxes? Do you have a special addendum or a modification.
Right.
Like, I'm not a tax expert by any means, but like my taxes for 2018 have already been filed. And I certainly was in that window for 7,500. So if someone were to purchase their car, say July 2nd, and they're in the window for the 1875 at that time, are they going to be retroactively added? I mean, I would hope they are, but then that would make sense for anybody in 2019. So if that's the case, then there is a chance to, when you do your taxes come 2020, to essentially get the 7,000 as part of your credit versus what you would have received now, which is 3,750 or whatever it might be. So it is interesting.
Seems overly complicated when it's tied to taxes like that.
I mean, look, I mean, it is by and large a complicated system to begin with. I mean, again, these numbers are all what you could get. It's not what you actually get. I got about half of the $7,500 when I did mine, because I'm a broke guy who doesn't make a lot of money. So the amount of money the government decided to give me was sort of hurt. And I'm a firm believer in that the tax cuts that were brought forward by the Republican leadership, that hurt a lot of people. I think if the tax changes if that tax cut hadn't happened, there's a good chance that people like me would actually have made more money in a return than they did. So it is a very complicated issue. I wish I knew more about accounting to give you a straight answer.
So me too.
But my gut tells me this is not going to work. If this was a different leadership, I would feel pretty confident. I don't see it with this one. But again, we've seen bills come out of this Congress from both parties and nothing gets done. Nothing gets done. So we'll see. But it'd be good if you were hinging your hopes on this, don't.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Never hinge your hopes on anything when it comes to politics.
Right.
We went through the whole thing last year when our rebates were canceled unceremoniously. There was a short window where there were some lawsuits involved, and Tesla finally won. And last I heard, about 150 were affected by that. So they were about 150 people could have necessarily placed their order again for the car and still qualified for the rebate. But then, it took them a long time to pay out. And I know there's some people that are still waiting for their rebates. Well, it's going to be almost a year now. So, but they seem to be going through it.
I was going to say, like, General Motors and Tesla has been fighting for this for over a year, collectively. There's a Republican named John Barrasso. He's a senator in the U.S. He's on the environment. Now, mind you, he chairs the Environment and Public Works Committee here in the U.S., okay? 2 months ago, back in February, he proposed legislation get this, to end the credit and then impose a fee, a highway user fee, on electric vehicles to pay for road repairs. I mean, it's just
that's the best move possible for the environment, right?
Right, but that's what's weird though, is we're in this time and place, and we talked about this before the show, which is you could be handed on a silver platter information that is vetted and has been proven and is just clear as day, evidentiary information. And you have denier after denier after denier who are in positions of power, who are making it so insanely ridiculous to actually get anything done. And I understand I'm on my high horse here, but it is bothersome for me to see people like this that just don't understand. Like, I understand you want to have, like, listen, here in Florida, and this has been mentioned on our show before, our roads are pretty bad here. We don't have straight asphalt. We actually mix it. It's like a shell, like crushed shells, because the road gets extremely hot. So we have just now on 95, there's been doing a project lately where they're resurfacing a lot of the highway. And they have to. It's just a thing they do. I can't imagine I have to be the one that would pay for that as an EV owner, but some gas guzzler next to me doesn't. When the majority of cars on the road are not electric vehicles, or even hybrids for that matter, and most of the damage caused cannot be because of electric vehicles. They haven't been on the roads that much. So this complete, and I'm going to use the word idiocy, to propose that kind of legislation is counterintuitive to everything we understand about the way that we're driving. And there's been a great study this week done by Vox. If you haven't a chance to read it, they're talking about what Barcelona wants to do, which is create super blocks. And what they're trying to do is get more cars off the road, make more of their city a walkable city for pedestrians and cyclists and things like that. And that kind of foresight, that kind of planning is an ingenious way of saying, here's a problem we identify, and we're going to make very vast changes to the way we look at our city as a whole. And yes, there's going to be some inconveniences, but we're looking at the greater picture of how it affects our community as a whole, and how we're going to make getting to places actually a lot easier and a lot safer. And by getting more cars off the road and by making streets passable for pedestrians, you're overall changing the way that your city is designed. You're changing how you're going to make people want to go there to just be like, this is great. This is safe. I can live in the city. I can live in this building and walk to the grocery store. I can go to this restaurant. I can bike to school and things like that, and never have the concern of being hit by a car. So it is. Look, all of this to me is a simple thing, which is I would love if you are someone who lives in an area where you got a representative of your community who essentially is trying to get legislation passed that counters what your interests are. And this has been talked about on our show for those of you who live in the provinces in Canada or here in the U.S. or anywhere in the world where you have a chance to voice your democratic vote. Get out there and do that. You are empowered. You are the people that can make a difference. Don't just kind of sit with your hands crossed and wait for something to get better. Write letters, call your representatives, do what you can, make it known that what's happening is not what you want to see, that we need to do everything we can now. Like every day that passes that we're not doing something to actually better the environment, we're just making it worse. And I'm 41 years old. I don't have kids, and I'm greatly concerned about the next generation to come because I'm fearful in the next 40 years what my world's going to be. I can't even imagine in the next 50 to 100 years what theirs is going to be. That's it. That's my rant.
Okay. I thank you, Eric.
Eric Camacho, 2020, folks.
That's
right.
You got me into. I mean, look, this is a big bill. I hope it works out, but it'd be great if we could incentivize electric vehicles for far beyond this. Because again, I mean, it'd be great if we seeing it now for solar roofing. It'd be great if we saw it for all kinds of stuff. I mean, California has the 5th largest economy in the world. And they're doing things that a country should be doing as a state. Yep. So.
Oh, no, I agree 100%. Yeah. California gets it. And there's many European countries that get it. But it just seems in North America, it's just like, la, 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 la. They just, I don't know. It's frustrating.
Lobbyists.
Yes. And speaking of Europe, one more little bit before we move on. Switzerland. Finally, numbers came in for Switzerland in March. Woo. Model 3 became the best-selling passenger car in the country, beating long-standing bestsellers like the Skoda Octavia 801. Cars sold, the VW Golf at 546. Model 3 is in the 4th overall position in 2019. 10,000. No, where is it here? The numbers seemed to have shifted. I had 1,094, but it turns out it's 1,371.
Right. So in just the month of March alone, they registered just under 1,100 Model 3s. For the year, they have under 1,400.
Oh, that's what it is. Yes.
Right. And exactly. So for the year, so they're 4th overall in the year. The Skoda Octavia leads all the passenger vehicles in Switzerland. But for I mean, mind you, deliveries in Europe didn't start that long ago. So in a very short time frame, they've now taken the lead position just this past month, and they've quickly gained ground on Volkswagen and Skoda and others. But yeah, they're already the 4th most registered car in Switzerland. I'm sorry.
And we're seeing this increase because as more countries come on board with the Model 3 deliveries, it's going through the roof. It's two parts. I think it's, of course, the pent-up demand because people are waiting for this car for a long time. But the second part has to do with fuel costs. When people are smart, and if you look at the fuel costs in Europe, which are easily double what they are in the U.S., it doesn't take very long to figure out, if you're spending $6, $7, $8 a gallon of fuel over there, and you can get a car that can drive on pennies, Yeah, okay, so the cost delta of the car maybe is a little bit more, but for the overall length of the car, you're going to keep it. Pays for itself. So I think Model 3 is going to do exceptionally well in Europe. Probably even better than North America will ever see, mainly because of the fuel costs. I mean, this is they've got a winner on their hands. That's for darn sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, two little bits of information. We can't talk about much about it because it still hasn't happened yet, but Tesla has announced that they will post their financial results for Q1 of 2019 after the market closes on Wednesday, April 24th. So you'll be able to read those financial paperwork. You can go to the website called IR, that's Investor Relations, ir.tesla.com. And I think after the market closes, I think it's about 5 o'clock our time, right, when the markets close, and in the US
around 4.
So in California they'll usually have a press call that you'll be able to listen in on the shareholders, or not the shareholders, but the earnings results webcast. You'll be able to tune in on that. So obviously that will happen. Then we will talk about it on the 25th. Interestingly, this happens literally 2 days after the full self-driving demonstration in Palo Alto at their headquarters. So I think the timing is a little interesting.
Yeah.
I think there's some skewing going on, that they want the financial people to maybe stop looking at the Q1 numbers maybe a little bit and focus on, hey, look at this shiny little thing we've got going on. So we know Q1 numbers are not going to be all that great for earnings. There's a glimmer of hope going forward, but I think the timing is very interesting on this. All right,
so that should be a very uneventful week.
Yeah, exactly. One more little piece of information before we take a break and hear from our sponsor, and then we'll get to viewer and listener questions. Our good friends at Jetta Wireless, those are the guys that make the wireless charging pad for the Model 3. They've told me that this weekend they're going to be launching their version 1 owners upgrade program. Details will be posted on their website, and you can follow them on Twitter as well. So for those of you who have a version 1 who would like to upgrade to the version 2 pad, they will have a special discount. Like I said, details will be out there. I just wanted to put that out there because they're really good friends of ours. They make a stellar product. So those of you who had that and want to upgrade to the version 2, which is really, really good, highly, highly recommended. I actually like it better than the Nomad one personally. So you'll be able to check that out. So look for that sometime this weekend. I'll tweet it out when it happens, and so you guys can follow along. I just wanted to put that on their behalf. So we're going to take a little break here. We'll hear from our sponsors at FineLab, and then we'll get to viewer and listener questions. FineLab has a line of protective coatings that were engineered to protect your Tesla's paint, leather, carpet, plastic, and wheels, effectively blocking all those UV rays and environmental factors before they ever get to ruin your brand new baby. FineLab offers a complete line of car care products and ceramic coatings for both the do-it-yourselfer and professional detailers. Did we mention we also have the world's first self-healing coating? Check us out at finelab.com, that's spelled F-E-Y-N-L-A-B, to see the science behind the self-healing. Check out our product catalog and click Contact Us for a free quote from a certified installer in your area. FineLab and Tesla, we were meant for each other. Well, it's that time on the show where we answer your viewer and listener questions. Big thank you for everybody sending them in. Again, look for them on a weekly basis. We try to get them out on Wednesdays or Thursdays before we do the show. Look on Twitter. We have a Google form that you can fill in, and you can submit your questions. So jumping in here, the first question comes from Maurice. He says, what happens if the phone key, which is the key card in the Model 3, shuts down during a drive? Will the car conclude that you have left the car and stopped driving as there is no Bluetooth connection to the phone? Well, that's pretty easy because we all know, well, you guys know, of course, the key card, all it really does is it authorizes for you to put the car into drive. If you take the key card away, nothing happens. Mm-hmm. You will still need the key card to get into the car, or your Bluetooth connection has to be there in order to unlock the vehicle. But otherwise, the key card, all it does is authorize you. It would be a huge safety problem, obviously, if something was to happen and all of a sudden it just said, that's it, I'm shutting down while you're driving.
Having done so many test drives, only needs the key card to start the car.
Yeah.
Once the car is started, you can take the key card and put it away.
Exactly. So that answers your question, Maurice. Hopefully that's what you were looking for. Next question comes from Kevin. He says, with all the technology in Tesla, why is the capability to have satellite radio not included? Well, we talked about this, and the Model 3 and the X do not have satellite radio. The only car that Tesla had actually put XM radio in the cars was the Model S. But the only car that had it, or the model of the Model S, was you had to have the sunroof, the panoramic opening sunroof, because that's where they put the antenna. The consensus seems to be that the antenna is different or bulky or something to that effect, and they just haven't been able to put it in the other two cars. Now, I'm sure there are. Listen, I'm not an XM person. I don't listen to that, but I'm sure there are XM devices that you can get that can stream over Bluetooth of some form, or an app on your phone or something.
Correct,
I
app
don't
on your
really
phone.
know. Yeah, exactly. So you can get around that limitation. I know it's a little interesting, but that's largely, I think that's why that's what's not included. Okay. Ian, you want to talk to Darren? Darren submits a question. He says, how does the Model Y entry and exit compare to the Model X? Well, I can answer that one. And then the second part is, any noise being made about the 2019 Canadian federal budget and the $45,000 cutoff? All Teslas are out. Well, I'll answer the first part. Ian, you can tackle the second one, okay?
Sure.
So the way I've described the Model Y to a lot of people is like, Goldilocks and the Three Bears. You got Mama Bear, Papa Bear, and Baby Bear, right? Model Y is Baby Bear. It's right in the middle. It fits. It's between the Model 3 and the Model X, not only in size. So yeah, the entry of that car is definitely, it's higher than the Model 3. It's easier to get in and out of than the Model 3. The Model X sits a little higher. Don't forget, Model X has air suspension, so you can adjust the air suspension whether you want it higher or lower. Model Y doesn't have that yet that we know of. So I would say it's pretty close. It's definitely, so if you have issues with getting into a sedan like an S or a 3, the Model Y or the X is a better vehicle for you. Ian, you want to tackle the second part?
Yeah, so in regards to the Canadian federal budget proposal, where we're going to have potentially a federal rebate on vehicles of electric vehicles of $45,000 or less, that created, of course, a huge amount of noise because it cuts off, number one, the most popular selling EV in Canada right now, the Model 3. But there was a couple of other ones that got triggered, and where the discussion got interesting was the Chrysler Pacifica plug-in hybrid, which is built in Ontario, was excluded from this as well. And that immediately caused a whole bunch of arms to go up at the Chrysler factory saying, hey, you're going to put a big stick in our spokes here if you don't get this vehicle on board. Its base price, I think, is around $50,000 or $51,000. And the federal minister for economic development immediately came out and said, "Oh no, we'll figure out a way. We'll get the Sebring included." That was the end of the statement.
The Pacifica.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
What am I saying?
Yeah.
Sebring. Oh, I'm
That's
tired.
okay.
Sorry, guys. So yeah, so the
Jesus Chrysler.
and the show goes to the dogs.
Womp, womp, womp.
So yeah, so they came out and said, no, don't worry, we'll fix it so that the plug-in Pacifica qualifies. Well, it was a very open-ended statement. There was no ensuing discussion as to how they were going to do that. Was Chrysler going to adjust the pricing? Was the federal government going to make some sort of an exception list? Were they going to raise the limit? This has all been floating up in the air. But to me, if they include it by some special clause, then to me it opens the door for Tesla to say, well, wait a second here. Why does that make it in at 51,000 when the Model 3 at 47 does not? That was the strangest thing imaginable. I mean, and I sort of aligned myself with a lot of people saying this was the sign of a federal government that's like, okay, let's give the appearance of being on board with this and giving a rebate, but we'll cut it off just below the point where it's actually going to cost us a huge amount of money because we're only going to have it to what amounts to maybe a quarter or a third of the potential sales. So I appreciate the effort, but really if they want to have a serious effect, they got to bring it up to at least 50 or 51. Let's get the plug-in.
Yeah, speaking of which, because I have been talking to some other groups that are influential with the government, and they're making some noise about getting it raised at least $5,000. I mean, I think 50,000 is probably more reasonable because, of course, then you get the standard range Model 3 in there.
Yeah. If
they get an extra 55, then it covers even more cars. I mean, I know at the car show when I was talking to Kia, the Kona that they have, is that the Kona, the Hyundai Kona?
That's another one. Yeah. Yeah,
that's another one because they're only going to sell, the initial one's only going to be the fully loaded one, and it's going to come in at 50, 55, somewhere in there. So yeah. Okay. I hope that answers your question. Let's see here. Another question comes from James. He says, concerning Autopilot, are the software updates going to address phantom braking or other exaggerated braking? I've had a couple of instances where my car inappropriately braked on the interstate with large trucks behind me in autopilot mode. I'm most anxious about the traffic behind me in the event my car brakes unexpectedly on the highway. Love my car otherwise. Now, I haven't had any more issues with phantom braking. I've had, I think, off the top of my head, 3 instances of it. I know, Ian, you haven't had any issues, but Eric, you've mentioned even recently you've had that.
Yeah.
So it seems to be, I think it seems to be related. I think, you know, and the consensus seems to be the car is going slightly uphill and there has to be some kind of overpass or some kind of signage or something like that. And the radar gets confused, bounces back or something, and it causes this braking issue. So that seems to be that's the evidence that we seem to have. There might be other extraneous circumstances, but so it hasn't been completely eliminated. I'm sure Tesla's aware of it. Just so you know, if it happens, submit a bug report. Press the voice command button on your car, say bug report, phantom braking at this location. Hopefully it geotags and sends that report off to Tesla engineers. I really wish there was an email address where you could send bug reports or whatever to Tesla rather than the voice command. I mean, geez. It's frustrating.
I do want to add one thing that I will give the car credit for. So this happened to me over the weekend, where I was driving home from work, and there was a vehicle that was sort of riding the lane next to me on my driver's side. And as she kind of kept teetering over, my car on autopilot was like, okay, I think the car is trying to get over, and it would sort of brake a little bit. The regen would sort of take a bit, thinking the car might try to get in front of me, might hit me, whatever it was. And this driver was probably doing this about 4 or 5 times. So it was annoying after the 5th time of my car just kind of going, eep, eep, and having that jerk motion. But it was good to have that safety feature built in, because even if I certainly saw the way she was driving, but if I didn't, the car certainly is that extra set of eyes, which is a great benefit. So sometimes the phantom braking may be that there's something that you didn't see that the car did, of another driver sort of creeping into your lane or do some other thing, and so your car's taking an evasive maneuver. But yes, there's been instances where my car will all of a sudden start decelerating quite rapidly because of an overpass, some bridge or something else, and there's some weird shadow and the camera gets confused, and that happens. But it's probably happened since I've had the car maybe 12 or so times. It hasn't been a lot. I've had the car now for about a year. So it's not a ton, but it happens from time to time.
Okay. Well, just remember to submit a bug report. Anytime you find some kind of weird anomaly with a car, use that function. Tesla. I mean, the more we bombard Tesla with bug reports, maybe they'll pay attention. All right, next question comes from Daniel. He says, when will AutoPark be able to orientate itself on lines, white lines, to park itself in correct spaces without cars next to it? Even my Prius could do this years ago. I'd love to have this feature again. You know what? That's funny, because that's a great question. You'd think with all this technology available to us that AutoPark, as part of Enhanced Autopilot, would be able to park this way. We know that it has to measure parking spaces, either parallel or perpendicular, in addition to the vision system. But I kind of feel the same way. I really wish, I mean, look, the car drives on the highways as long as it sees the lines. I know we've had this discussion just before the break where Eric had said, well, Eric, you give us your opinion. I'm not going to speak for you.
Yeah, I don't think it'll ever happen, just in due part because parking lots tend to be hit and miss with the way that they're marked. I've certainly seen highways that have poorly painted lines. Parking lots are almost on average remarkably worse. I think part of the reason is that even if you park in the middle with no other cars around you, the reason why the cameras need the other vehicles there is in due part because it needs to know how the car is going to fit. And I think the idea of using auto park when you're there. Now, maybe with enhanced summon, maybe there's some component of that it might use the white lines.
Just about to say that.
Yeah. But that certainly is, and again, we're talking extremely slowed speeds compared to it. Auto park is actually very quick by comparison to enhanced summon. So maybe just maybe there'll be some ability to do that, or a setting you can set down the road. I just don't see it in the immediate future, just because, again, parking lots are hit and miss with how they're maintained, and unless the lines are clearly marked on the ground, odds are likely the car may have a problem. And then if you're in the vehicle or not, then what? So it's to be seen. I don't think it's going to be for a long time, if at all, but that's just my opinion.
I'm just going to jump in there for a second. I'm curious if Daniel's question, though, after rereading it, isn't about parallel parking on the street where you have, like the little delineations for each spot. Mm-hmm. Because doesn't the Prius have some sort of an auto park where it would do its own parallel parking, similar to Well,
a lot of cars have that, mm-hmm. and it's just
and
based on
if it applies to that, that would be a more interesting question if you think about it in that sense.
So I'm going to throw out two bits of information. One of them is, we know that one of the features, I mean, let's face it, most of what Tesla has described as part of what enhanced autopilot is going to do is already here. One of the future features that they're reserving for full self-driving is this seek and park mode that I've been talking about, where you'll be able to do the reverse enhanced summon thing, where you press the button, the car will go find its own parking space. So that basically opens up a whole other can of worms. What does it determine? What is a parking space? So I think that once we see that, maybe we'll have an addition to enhanced autopilot to be able to help with that, because we don't know at that point whether the car will use existing cars to measure the parking spot, looking for spots between cars, or just go find a parking spot somewhere where there are no lines. At that point, we'll make a determination what they're doing. The other thing, too, is I wanted to throw, and it just popped into my head here, was, you guys remember when Faraday Future, that company that doesn't seem to ever release any products, did their demo at CES, I think it was a couple of years ago, where they had the FF91 slowly go out into a parking lot, and their demo was seek and park mode, let the car go find a parking spot. And I remember very distinctly at this demonstration that they had a parking lot full of cars, and they randomly chose a car, that's what they said, to take out to open up a spot, and that is the exact spot where that car went and parked. It was not an open parking spot. So at least in their demonstration, they were looking at places that it could measure to actually fit into. So again, it just goes back to, what is Tesla's intentions going to be? Is it going to be looking for parking spots where it can actually measure between cars, because that's ostensibly what it does now? Or are they going to expand it and rely on the vision-based system to say, yeah, it's an open parking spot, I'll go park over here? Time will tell. So we really don't know what the answer is. I think it would be awesome to have it.
I was going to say, I do want to add now, the other problem too is that there are many times I'm driving the road and I'm stuck in traffic at a stop light or something else, and the parking icon pops up on my screen thinking that there's a place to park, and there isn't one. Yep. So to me, there's a danger in making the leap to go that, okay, the car should be able to park in an empty space with nothing else around it, when it already has difficult time understanding whether I can park now or not. And you're like, well, I'm on a highway. I can't park here. I don't understand. So it still has much to learn as the software gets better. And look, let's go back to the FSD computer. If the computing output of 2.5 is 80% capacity now, and now FSD can do the same processing power at 5%, then maybe that's the computer that's going to change the way we think of auto park and everything else. But if we're looking at just a current computer, I just can't see how it's going to do it in this version. I don't know how to.
Well, that's why they've said the seek and park mode is reserved for FSD, which requires the FSD computer, which is the computer upgrade. So
it's going to be a lot smarter.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot smarter. So, all right, I think we've beaten that one to death. Let's move on here. Sam asks, will a standard range Model 3 have a newly designed battery pack? Well, newly designed is interesting because Elon did confirm some tweets ago, and I don't have it queued up here, but he did say that there were going to be some efficiencies in the standard range battery pack that they were trying to fix. And I think that's, I don't know if it's one of the holdups, because we've seen a lot of standard range plus cars being delivered, but a lot of people are still waiting for their standard range, like the bargain basement $35,000 car. We've yet to see that yet. So we'll remain to be seen on that. I mean, we really honestly won't really know definitively until somebody rips open one of these battery packs and confirms it. So that'll be, somebody like Jason Hughes or you know, the Monroe Associates, if they decide to do a tear apart, or somebody buys a wrecked one, maybe Rich Rebuilds will do something. Who knows? My money's on Rich. He'll do something like that. Okay, last question of the evening comes from Eve. He says, due to the Model Y, there is most likely going to be an influx of used Model S and X on the market soon. What would you recommend as a checklist? Also, aside from looking at the watt hours per mile or watt hours per kilometer to check to see if the car has been thrashed, how would one check for battery degradation? Well, that's hard to describe. It's hard to
There's
really
a lot to
say.
unpack there.
Yeah, there's lots in there. Listen, unless somebody has a Teslafy account where they could give you access to it or whatever, it's hard to actually look at metrics as to how the car's been done, because the logs in the car, at least visually from the energy graph, only goes, you know, what is it, 50 kilometers or 30 miles or something like that. So you don't have all that much to go on. Battery degradation, well, that's a little bit easier because you can do 100% charge on the car and you can see what it actually goes to. So that's fairly straightforward. The thing about battery degradation, though, is that Tesla's, I mean, we have good evidence now. We have good numbers. I mean, the car's been made for 7 years. Battery degradation is really not that big of a deal. They have very good thermal management on these cars. When somebody asks me, well, how long is the battery going to last on this car? I'm like, 20 years. Who cares? You're not going to have the car that long to even worry about it. And besides, by then, replacing a battery is going to be cheaper anyways, because there's going to be better technology. It's going to be cheaper. So don't even worry about the battery. That's not something I would be concerned about.
Yeah, I would add a couple things there. So one thing is, a lot of the S and X's that are on the roads now, most of them are leases.
Yeah.
So in many cases, those vehicles within 2 or 3 years are being turned in. So you could already now, if you went online to Tesla's website and you're looking at used vehicles, those are all, and I shouldn't say all of them, a fair amount of them are going to be leased vehicles that were just turned in at end of lease, and the owner decided not to actually pay the residual. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, when it comes to the batteries, yes, they're designed. Their intent is to last 2 decades. If you have the car for 6 years, wonderful. You still have 2 years left on that warranty that was put out by Tesla. And if you happen to buy an S or an X, well, congratulations. They had an unlimited mileage warranty on the battery. So you could, I mean, there are Teslas now, and you'll see this on the
whole
website.
drivetrain.
Right.
Yeah, the whole drivetrain. Yeah.
They have, everything's the original. There are cars now that are eclipsing 500,000 miles driven. Everything on the car is original. Brakes, battery, everything. Still original, except for
somebody just tweeted
and wipers.
Yeah, I was just showing somebody today, they tweeted out that they had 250,000 kilometers. Yeah, that's 160,000 miles or something.
And they haven't touched their brakes.
And haven't touched the brakes. They took the look at the brakes, and the brake pads are perfect.
Yeah, so, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, you can conceivably, in any electric car, not touch your brake pads for about 100,000 miles, give or take your conditions. So if you live in a climate where, there's salted roads, you might find some rusting and things like that. But generally, you're not going to have to worry about it for 100,000 miles. And there are a lot of American vehicle owners who don't even have their cars for 100,000 miles. Again, because leases or trade-ins or whatever. So they're valid questions. I just think that when it comes to electric cars, especially with Tesla, it's not a thing you think about. It's not what you worry about. If you're looking at a vehicle that's 4 years old, well, you still have 4 years left on the battery warranty. So if something were to happen, that's great. And
you're covered.
Nowadays, it used to be that you would see about 4% year over year in degradation in your battery. Tesla's gotten that down through software and just overall battery technology improving down to about 1%. So if you have a 300-mile range car, you're talking 3 miles at worst on a year-to-year basis. So if you have that car for 10 years, you're losing 10% of your range at best. So, or at worst, rather, I should say. So I don't think it's really that big of a deal.
Just make sure the car's in good shape, and if you buy it from Tesla, you have a better chance of it being better looked over than somebody privately. That's just, I mean, the thing you have to remember, though, is that if you're looking at an S or an X, they're expensive cars to fix. So whatever you get, highly recommend you get something that has some kind of transferable warranty or whatever, because, the last thing you need is a Falcon wing door needing $5,000 worth of repairs or something. So that's why I bought an extended warranty on mine. I plan on keeping my car for a long time. Yeah, clean title. Yeah, don't stay away from stuff like salvage. I mean, unless you're rich and you can get away with that. Don't be doing that.
And I would say don't look at vehicles that are on some kind of a private seller eBay. Like, if anything, I would say start with looking at Tesla. Then you can look at dealerships like CarMax and others where Teslas are often traded into because they get better values there sometimes. But start with dealerships. Just try to avoid going private if you can, just to kind of give you what numbers you're looking at. And if you find a private person selling their car for about the same value, then you might have some more confidence. But if someone's selling a car that's listed on, like, here's a 2016 Model S 75D, and the person's listing it for $30,000. Something's wrong with that car. I don't know. It's just they're not selling the car for $30,000. It's not even worth that little, unless they put like 300,000 miles on.
Speaking of which, if somebody's interested in a really good condition Model S 70D, I think it's a 2016. Get in touch with me. I have a friend of mine who's almost at the end of his lease, and he's trying to figure out whether he's going to buy it out or he wants to buy it privately. So if you're anywhere in Canada or in the Toronto area or whatever, get in touch with me and stuff. I got somebody who's got a car. Probably get you a pretty good deal on it. Well, I think that's the end of it, guys. We did it.
Bye, everybody.
Yep. Wow. Well, this is the time of the show where you guys get a chance to plug whatever you want. Ian, what's on your mind these days? Where can people reach you and see what you got doing?
Well, as always, on Twitter, the handle is my name, @Ian Pavelko, with the nickname Mad Hungarian, and glad to answer any reasonably short questions that you have. We sometimes get into some long stuff, and that's where I would refer you to come over to the forum, where we can go into a nice, long-winded thread with everybody on there. Happy to do that. And on the Tesla Owners Online forum, you will find me with the handle, again, Mad Hungarian. And then lastly, there's the t-shirt project, teespring.com, teespring.com. Trev, I know you'll put that in the links there. So if you're looking for one of the Evolveware or Weapons of Mass Adoption shirts, we can hook you up. Link will be in the description. Eric, where can people find you?
You guys can find me on this website called Twitter, if you haven't heard of it. It's twitter.com, and my handle is ECFix. That is ECFIX. And real quick, while we're taping the show, Elon just tweeted out that the fairing halves have been recovered from the Falcon Heavy launch tonight. So
nice.
More parts coming back to shore.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great to hear that. Well, as usual, you can find me on Twitter, very active there. The handle's Model 3 Owners. Check out the forum at teslaownersonline.com. Don't forget, our merch store is back now. I decided to put out some more some T-shirts and stuff just with the TOO logo on it, so you can check that out. Link will be in the description. You want to check it out. Again, Ian's stuff is more clever than mine, but hey, if you want to show your cred, you can get one of our shirts as well. Want to say a big thanks to our sponsors. That's Fine Lab, Dolaban Insurance, and the great guys at EvanX who support us right from the beginning. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Last but not least, if you'd like to support the show, check out our Patreon page. You can find that at patreon.com/Model 3 Owners Club. I haven't changed the URL yet. Most people know that's where we are. But yeah, we appreciate all your support. That's it for this show, and we will catch you on the next one. Good night, everybody. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you later.
Take care.
Bonsoir.